Okay, I'm looking at my clock on my PC and it tells me that it's just afternoon and I want to be conscious of everyone's time, so I'll go ahead and kick things off. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Loyack and I serve as the Vice President of Global Business Services for the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina. We're very excited to have you all with us today. The Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina is the organization that provides a variety of critical economic development functions on the state's behalf, including things like tourism promotion and attracting new businesses into the state of North Carolina. The team that I manage focuses on three major roles. We support existing industry in all 100 counties. We promote international selling and exports. And for the purpose of today, we also provide counseling to entrepreneurs looking to start a business in North Carolina. Today, I'm joined by two true champions of small businesses, United States Senator Thom Tillis and Mr. Brian Hamilton, the founder of the Brian Hamilton Foundation. I'd like to start with brief introductions of these two gentlemen, and then we'll dive right into the questions. Senator Thom Tillis was elected to represent North Carolina in 2014. Senator Tillis is a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, the Veterans Affairs Committee, Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee, and Judiciary Committee. Before serving in the Senate, he was a Speaker of the House here in North Carolina for the North Carolina General Assembly, where he played an instrumental role in enacting job-creating policies and reforming North Carolina's tax and regulatory codes. He lives with his wife, Susan, in Huntersville, North Carolina, and they're the proud parents of two grown children and grandparents to one granddaughter. We're also joined by Mr. Brian Hamilton. Brian Hamilton is the co-founder of Sageworks, the country's first fintech company, which was one of the largest providers of software to U.S. banks. He sold the company to a leading private equity firm in 2018 and is also the founder of the Brian Hamilton Foundation and Inmates to Entrepreneurs, both national organizations committed to making entrepreneurship for all. Mr. Hamilton holds multiple patents for his work in automating financial analysis. He's a regular guest on CNBC and is regularly quoted in and writes for all major national media publications. He's also a contributor to Inc. magazine. The first in his family to attend college, Brian holds an undergraduate degree from Sacred Heart University, where he served on the Board of Trustees, and holds an MBA from Duke University. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today.
Great to be here.
Thank you, John. And by the way, for those who are watching this, and I see it's being recorded, this is not an ascot. This is actually a Carolina Panthers mask that I'm wearing when I go out to do my part for social distancing.
I thought that was a Duke mask, actually, but I guess that's okay. That's okay.
That's a highly unlikely scenario in my household.
That's funny. That's funny.
I keep one close by. This is made in High Point, North Carolina by a 100-year-old sock company, so I'm very proud of this. Well, Senator Tillis, I'd love to start with you. We know that small business is the backbone of this country and that North Carolina thrives on it. There is no doubt about that. In fact, last week we celebrated National Small Business Week. And as we were looking around the state, we know we can count on nearly 900,000 small businesses here in the state of North Carolina. When people ask me what keeps me up at night, I typically say that I'm worried about those businesses, but what words of encouragement would you give to entrepreneurs during these challenging times?
Well, first off, thank you for allowing me to be here, John. And I also have Kyle Sanders, who's my Deputy Chief of Staff. He focuses on economic development. I do believe I'm constantly looking for silver linings in the wake of this crisis. And I do believe that there are a lot of opportunities for the entire jobs ecosystem in North Carolina. If you take a look at measures that we will probably pass here, trying to encourage businesses to rethink and maybe reformulate some of their supply chains, that's going to present a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs across the state. I think that if you if we get it right and we tune the CARES Act and maybe provide additional capabilities just to bridge this gap as we're going through the virus, that North Carolina is absolutely in the top quartile, probably the top decile for coming out of this current crisis, I think with great opportunities. I was on the phone call with entrepreneurs in the military business, defense spending space. I think that there are many opportunities, which is why I'm spending a lot of time talking to economic developers across the state to make sure that we have the resources to seize those opportunities.
No, that's fantastic. And thank you very much for your leadership on that. You are absolutely right. You know, through all of this, the team at EDPNC that supports entrepreneurs are obviously very aware of the resources available to help small businesses and entrepreneurs recover. But it is fascinating that the entrepreneurial spirit has not died at all. We still get calls from businesses every day from people who are looking to start a business here. And so we're happy to support them.
Well, Brian, I will also tell you that there are a lot of entrepreneurs who have stepped up and came up with great ideas for the COVID response. Our office is spending a lot of time trying to accelerate emergency use authorizations and a number of other things that hit the entrepreneurial and small business sector. The other thing I do have to say, since Brian brought up Duke, is that our university system, I just had a phone call with the president of Duke last week. They're doing extraordinary work. UNC, NC State are doing extraordinary work, and they're going to be able to create these incubators that increase the opportunities for entrepreneurs.
Right. Hey guys, I just want to unwind this carefully because it's, you know, there's so much just strange stuff going on right now. None of us have ever lived through this. So I'm not going to be a party pooper, but you guys know this already. We've got a lot of Main Street businesses. I'm sitting here in Apex, North Carolina, Main Street, America, a nice bakery across the street, a coffee shop. And these guys have lost, you know, 80, 90% of their revenue. And I know that we're concerned about this because think about it. About 65% of new jobs are created by Main Street businesses, not tech people like me. Before I ran a tech company, I ran a laundromat. Now, what would you do if I had a laundromat right now? So the key issue here, and we'll start in the negative, and I promise I'll end positive, but the key thing here is most of these businesses, most of these people have about 2 weeks of cash flow. Where are they right now? They're 2 months out. So it's a mess. And I think it's great. Tom, I can't even imagine trying to get through something through Congress. I mean, my goodness, you got 100 people have to vote the same way. I mean, that's extraordinary, right? But in the CARES Act, for example, I was a big proponent of get the money directly to the businesses. Don't hand the football off 3 times. We're going to get it to the banks. Then it's got to go to the SBA. And if you look at the real credit decisions there, it's no different from getting the money directly there. So I guess I want to paint the picture here. We have a very solemn obligation. I know you guys know that. I really do, to help Main Street businesses. It's not the tech companies, not people like me who drive America. From the inception of this country, it's the small business person, 65% of the job, 80% of the innovation. Our jobs are contingent on that. So, you know, starting a little bit negative, you know, but reality is right now, I'm really concerned we could have millions of businesses go out of business in the country. Now, I think you guys are right. Senator Tillis, absolutely got to focus on the positive. But I'm really concerned about getting that money through the pipeline. I used to be with the SBA. There's some bottlenecks there. We got 26 million businesses. 13 million, 20 million are going to be affected by what's going on right now. We got to get that money out, and we got to get it out quickly because we got a 2-month delay here, and that is death. I mean, most small businesses got a couple of weeks of cash flow. Good heavens. I mean, you're asking to go 2 weeks here. Nobody caused this. You know what I mean? And I know that in DC, that's, you know, everybody's debating and fighting and everything. Nobody caused this, but we got to help those Main Street businesses right now. And I guess on that note, before I get into sort of anecdotally what we can do, right? Just for the people listening, it might be one person, could it be a million? I don't know. Buy small. We don't need to help the guy out on Amazon. He seems to be doing fine without us, right? Buy from your Main Street bakeries, Main Street retail companies. We as citizens can kind of come together to help the small business because without them, we're going to have job problems and all this other stuff. Now, turning it positive, I think you're absolutely right. It's great to hear what you're doing in DC, talking to the economic development people in the universities. I think there are opportunities. And if you, again, you look at entrepreneurs, we're wily, we're creative, we're adaptive, we're looking for seams. Maybe you do a mobile tire repair business or You know, at our foundation, we teach people how to do small business, landscaping businesses. So now's an opportunity, right? If you're an entrepreneur, to think, hey, what can I provide that maybe a month ago I couldn't provide? But, you know, nobody caused this thing, but the truth is, you know, we're in a world of hurt here for Main Street businesses, not tech people like me, but the Main Street people who are the basis of the foundation of everything culturally that we have.
No, I agree. With you.
I think that if I were not strapped to a Senate chair, that I would, as an entrepreneur, see a lot of opportunities for the way that we're behaving now as an opportunity for businesses where some of that becomes standard operating procedure. Back on your point about the providing for Main Street, I completely agree with it. I will tell you, though, that if you had told me a year ago that we were going to pass a bill with about $700 billion in liquidity trying to go to businesses, right, and we were going to get it out the door in a matter of 6 weeks, I would have bet against it. So the Paycheck Protection Program has its kinks, but the fact that banks could go from getting guidance on Thursday to making loans on Friday was a pretty extraordinary feat. And it was really something to provide a positive shock to a system that was in peril. But now we got to go back.
I don't want to, and I get what you're saying too, by the way. And I just want to be real clear. To do that in a place like DC, I don't even want to imagine what that's like for you guys to have to do that. So I totally get it. But if you're looking at the numbers, we got about 13 to 15 million businesses affected right now. We got 250,000 loans that are out in the street. So do the math on it. We still got a lot of challenges. And I'm so glad to hear, Senator Tillis, that you're working on it. But there's a big bottleneck there, and we got to blow that up, because right now, every single day, there are businesses that are suffering. There's these mom and pop coffee shops, and I don't think we need to worry about the tech guys. I don't think we need to worry about, you know, these sort of maybe the government contractors, but there's a lot of Main Street businesses. And I know you know that, and that's a tough job. I really do understand that. But the numbers right now are, if you really look at them, I'm a little concerned about it.
So, Brian, you know, it's just before all this, the current situation really began to come to a head back in late February, early March. I found myself out in Morganton, North Carolina, and you drive through some of the main drags in Morganton, you see exactly what you're describing. That is Main Street, North Carolina, all small businesses, all privately owned, and really wonderful to see. You know, as I drive out, I certainly see a lot of your billboards on my way. But tell me, what is it? What is it that makes you so passionate about teaching people how to start a business?
Well, it's a good question. When I came up, my father was a Marine. He didn't graduate from high school. Later on, he got his GED. You know, guys like me, we always claim poverty and rags to riches. But, you know, the truth is I was raised around that. My dad had to work part-time. On the weekends, we go to these rich people's houses and clean out their gutters and cut their lawns, that type of thing. And I ran into these people called entrepreneurs. And I learned they weren't all bad people. Not all rich people are bad, right? Senator Tillis, you know that. There's not everybody bad who's in politics or capitalists or free enterprise people. I met these wonderful people who were entrepreneurs, and they embraced me. And I said, that's for me. I'd go to the houses, I'd see these houses, like, that's what I want to do. So what I want to do, you know, politics, John, in your office, we got to all work together. And we really do, right? Is promote this thing called free enterprise, because it can take people like me who are, you know, from this background. I, you know, again, had to work my way through high school and college and all this type of stuff, and create a whole new way of looking at the world, a whole new culture for my family. And by the way, you know, we have these people, you guys know this, we got people, anti-free enterprise, anti-capitalism. In order to create wealth, you've got to create value. People don't understand this. The kids don't understand this, John. They don't understand this. I am sure that there are some greedy capitalists, greedy entrepreneurs out there. I haven't met any, but I know thousands of millionaires. I know some billionaires. And how did they do it? They did it by creating value. So the reason I'm passionate about it, and I know you guys are too, is because we're not going to get our boat higher by emptying the harbor. We got to get the harbor going up for everybody. And I know you're both advocates of that. So that's why it's important to me. Can I teach other people how to do this so that we can raise the harbor up for really everybody?
Thank you. And Senator Tillis, do you any entrepreneurs in your family?
Yes, as a matter of fact, my brother, who's in the state legislature, did it by going he built a jewelry repair business that grew into a jewelry store and now online presence. My father was an entrepreneur. He was an entrepreneur out of necessity. Sounds like Brian and I have some common family background. My father was in the Army. Neither of my parents graduated from high school, nor did three of my siblings. Two went on to get their GEDs. We were in a struggling family, and that man was always finding ways to pay the bills and to get us that clothing. Brian, I remember vividly, both my mom and dad would be working second jobs, usually in the July, August time frame. I now know as an adult, that was to buy us clothes to go back to school, and then again in October and November to buy us that one Christmas gift. But he did all kinds of things to create a business to sustain the family. His entrepreneurial dream was just to make sure that the family was well cared for. Other entrepreneurs want to take it up to a level and scale it. I've got a son-in-law right now who's developed a successful business, and I'm trying to encourage him to take it to the next level, to get out of the day-to-day and build on it. And I myself, being a partner at Price Waterhouse, I dealt with mainly bigger companies, but there's entrepreneurs throughout society. Some of them just need breakaway ideas to scale what they're doing, and then to exactly what Brian's saying, create demonstrable, sustainable value. That's the secret to entrepreneurs being successful.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And being around other successful people and these types of words. I mean, this coming out of DC. I mean, I watch the news. Every time I watch the news, I want to take a nap. Very negative about free enterprise, the capitalist system, and negative about you guys. You got out there running. You can't catch a break. Both parties. I mean, it's a mess. And I think we got to get positive language. I want to go back to what you said in the beginning, Senator. I think it's absolutely vital what you said to get private sector people like me working with the government. We all have a common goal here. My goodness, during World War II, when the Japanese bombed us, right, we all came together. We're Americans, right? And I know that sounds hokey and it's probably naive. But with entrepreneurship, what's the downside here? Everybody's for it. But I think what you talked about in the beginning was very true. Let's get the government working together with our foundation, with private sector people. Your story about your dad, I did not know that, by the way. But that becomes a very integral part to who you are. And you see people struggle. We need role models around that. And we don't need language in this country that people can't do it, because people can do it. Doesn't it race, their sex, whatever, you can absolutely do it. We need to be more positive about that. And that's hard today in sort of the cultural climate we've got,
Yeah, Brian, I think one thing you mentioned, first off, I get criticized because I go into a banking committee or a judiciary committee and I completely dismiss some of the things that come out of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. They want to demonize entrepreneurship. They want to demonize success. And big companies, there's a place in our ecosystem. If we don't recognize that large, medium, small businesses and entrepreneurs work in an ecosystem where if you get them out of balance, then you're going to do harm throughout the ecosystem. Well, I see that, when you have people that when they talk about the Paycheck Protection Program, saying this has got to go exclusively to small businesses. I said, what about small businesses that serve and their primary clients are intermediate sized businesses? So the good news is they make ends meet. The bad news is the number of their customers may diminish if we don't get the mix right. And that's I think that's a very important part of what we've got to do up in Washington to sustain and then ultimately get us back to a positive trajectory.
Yeah. By the way, it's an excellent point. And it's interesting, the language, right? I was interviewed last week. I think you'll both be really interested in this. I got interviewed last week and say, why is it that, let's just go to poverty. Let's go to the poor people. I don't, Senator Tillis, I don't know your dad, obviously. I don't know his circumstances, but he probably had some struggles. Maybe he couldn't make ends meet, right? He was out doing what you talked about, just making sure his family could eat, right? And why is it that there's so much language in this country around poor people about what they can't do, and demonizing groups of people on all sides? Like, this is an issue that is absolutely vital to all of us as Americans, and everybody's got to be part of the free enterprise system. And if they're not, you're going to have long-lasting poverty for absolutely no reason. But Mike, the question was, why is there no language for poor people out there about how to rise up? And I'm like, I don't know the answer to that. But we've got to get those people part of the system. And I think demonizing the free enterprise system, or certainly capitalism, is absolutely horrible. And I'm sure there's people out there who are bad actors. I mean, Wall Street, DC, wherever, entrepreneurs like me, there's always bad actors. But the free enterprise system has been integral since the inception of our country. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, all entrepreneurs. This is an American thing. And I think your point is very well taken around sort of dividing things up. I mean, the fact is, I don't want a big business who's a good actor through a temporary cash flow problem to not be able to get the money they need, Senator Tillis, to survive. That's what you're saying. I mean, we need these people to keep their employees.
Well, when you get back to language, I think it's very important. It's going to be particularly important as we go through the next phase of whatever Congress needs to do. I have an annual event that I go to in South Georgia, and I was born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida. So I go through the Jacksonville airport, and I always make sure that I reserve a couple of extra hours before I have to get back to the airport to go to a trailer park that I grew up in. And I go into that trailer park, it's still standing, and another one in Nashville, so that I can spend time talking with these people saying, this circumstance isn't your circumstance for life. It's something that you can work out of. And I happened to be, when I was in that trailer park, I moved out of home when I was 17, just after I graduated from high school. Should have gone to college, planning on going to the Air Force, had an automobile accident. So all of a sudden, instead of shipping off to Airman Basic in June, I was 17 years old, living on my own because I decided to move out, had a great family relationship. That language was starting to emerge in that time, because that was the time Ronald Reagan came in and gave people an aspiration to get out of those circumstances. We've got to get back to that.
Yeah. Well, by the way, that's really a passionate thing you're talking about, because I didn't know the background, but my father, my sister Susan got sick, real sick. $15,000 in medical bills he got hit with, which it might as well have been 15 million, right? Because we didn't have any money at all. And I didn't live in a trailer park, by the way. It's a tough neighborhood. But I used to cut lawns down at the park right down the street from me. And my point is, it's very interesting. I don't know what happened with you, but even my father's language was always around, yeah, sure, we got it bad, but we can be in poverty, but we don't need to be poor. Here's what you can do. And I think there's too many groups in the country that are telling people what they can't do. And to think about your father, I mean, I don't know, but I imagine your father wasn't telling you every day what you could not do in your life.
Oh, no. He let me go guns blazing. That's what I did. And that's where I got where I got. It took me a little bit longer. I was almost 37 years old before I finished my 4-year degree. I was already a partner at Price Waterhouse, and it was because I was given opportunities, but I also took a lot of chances. That's another thing that I think entrepreneurs need to understand. The most successful entrepreneurs failed more than once as they were trying to go after ideas. And we've also got to create a culture which today I think is a little bit more careful, a little bit less risk-taking. Some of that's a consequence of how prosperous we've been over this generation, but you've got to be willing to take chances, make a mistake, learn from them, and move on. That's the foundation, I think, of a successful entrepreneur.
Hey, by the way, I'm not going to ask you how you became a partner at the accounting firm without a bachelor's, but that's incredible. That was my background too, by the way. So I actually get that totally.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I've got similar feelings on entrepreneurs, and I think the majority of the folks that we run into, I think, are happy to take a chance at whatever their idea is. They want to get a business up and off the ground. They'll lean on organizations like mine to help remove some of the basic obstacles around here, regulatory issues, licensing issues. But I will say this, here in North Carolina at least, there isn't a lot that we necessarily do to help some of these businesses get off the ground. There's a lot of resources. There's great organizations out there like the Small Business Centers with our community college system, and organizations like SBTDC and SCORE and our Blink team. But Senator Tillis, one for you. Any thoughts on things that Congress might be able to do? Any policies or tax incentives, things focused on startups and entrepreneurs?
Well, look, I'm always looking for good ideas. The best ideas don't come from these offices. They come from conversations like this and things that you're looking at on the ground. And I do believe, I believe that there's a place when I was speaker, we tried to spend a lot of times on innovation and incenting businesses, particularly what I consider to be the strategic sectors. If you're looking at North Carolina and it's agriculture, if it's biotech, military and defense sectors, high-tech textiles. I want to have very tailored programs for the areas of the country that make sense. And I was always enforcing that discipline when I was speaker. Let's go after the things that we know we're the best at. And I think the same thing should hold true for any sorts of programs that the federal government would pass. It's also got to be measurable, though. I'm very, this goes back to my days as a partner at Price Waterhouse and IBM Global Business Services. If you can't measure it, I'm not in. There's got to be some way to be able to measure the return and progress, sometimes in dollars, sometimes with other quantifiable metrics, but you've got to, the programs that I was intent on putting in place back when I was speaker could always prove a return of some sort. It could be a return, a social benefit or an economic benefit, but those are programs that we're looking at. I'm not on the Commerce Committee and some of the committees of jurisdiction most likely flow through, but I'm always looking at ways to get an accelerator. And I think also working with the state to potentially have them implement the programs that make sense for their states. Not a big federal program, but something that we can facilitate.
Right, agreed. And Brian, from where you are, if you had a magic wand and you could provide 6 things to help entrepreneurs and small businesses get off the ground, what would they be?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm talking to the entrepreneurs here, and I mean, some of it's a little hokey, but we need hokey right now. It's kind of a tough time, right? I'd say control what you can and ignore what you can't control. I mean, look, no one in the country, not the president, not the Congress, certainly no entrepreneur, we can't control for certain what's going to happen with the economy, right? You can control customer service. You can definitely control the way you think about things. Now's a good time to sort of plan for your business, but you have to be incredibly good at vociferously ignoring what you cannot control and focus on what you can control. And that takes a lot of discipline. And for any entrepreneur who's been out there and who's struggled, they know that. I remember back 2008, guys, when Sageworks, I mean, we went metaphorically from $100 in revenue, because we sold to banks, metaphorically, $100 in revenue in 1 month to like 10. It wasn't a 10% decrease. We lost $90. I mean, it was unbelievable, similar to today. So when those things happen, you got to take stock. What can I control? I can control my customers. I control my leadership position with my employees, my messaging, my planning. That is the single most important thing that entrepreneurs can do, is really be careful about not getting wrapped into. I was interviewed today in WRAL. They're fine. They're fine, right? Don't watch the news. Every time I watch the news, it's like, I mean, it's depressing, right? We can't control what's out there. So control what you can. Specifically, do better at customer service. Be a better leader with your employees. By the way, I believe in radical honesty with my employees. Radical honesty. They already know what's going on, by the way, just for the, So here's what's going on. We've lost a certain amount of revenue. Here's our plan. Here's our cutbacks. Here's how we're going to work with our landlord. And I guess the last thing I would say is this, and it is a big one. If you're going to get behind on bills, and there's a lot of people, I'm looking out here at Apex, North Carolina, similar to probably downtown Raleigh, similar to New Bern, so all over the country, right? There's a lot of businesses really hurting right now. If you're going to get behind on paying your bills to your landlord, to your bank, whatever it is, get ahead of the curve, go to them and say, look, I've lost 50% of my revenue. I'm not going to stiff you, okay? But I'm going to need a little bit of time. But when we get nervous as people, when we get stressed, we shut down and then we stop communicating. So get ahead of the curve and talk to the bank and say, look, I might be a little bit late. And in my experience, not always, most people are good people. Most people are good people. This is the way it is. If you explain it to them and you're proactive about it, they will work with you. So that's some, quick bullet points.
That's terrific. And Senator Tillis, one of the things that I see as our role is, and I think, going back to the point of providing value, even as a government state-funded agency, I think one of the best things that we can do, and I think our team in general, we act as conduits out to a variety of different resources. We can help remove some of these obstacles, but what advice would you have for someone like me here on a state level? What are the things that we can do to streamline this startup process? How can we get more small businesses out there and running and help them avoid some of the obstacles that we know they're going to run into?
Well, first off, the federal government needs to play a role in that. If you take a look, we had a banking committee hearing, it was probably about a year ago, and we were talking about some additional regulation that was just about to hit the books on beneficial ownership. And I remember having somebody who I respect from the administration say, well, it's only a 2 or 3 page form. It's really not that big of a burden on small business. I said, buddy, when you're a sole proprietor, and so you're the CEO, the COO, the vice president of marketing, the HR director, and the regulatory affairs person, a 3-page document from the federal government with penalties for getting an I or a T not dotted or crossed is chilling. So what we have to do is start in the same way that we did regulatory tailoring for the banking industry through a bill that we passed. It's called Senate Bill 2155, but it was tailoring the regulations to the risk of the entity. I think that we need to have a mindset up here that we have to tailor regulations to the size and the risk of an associated entity, so that I can just remove the barriers to entry for businesses, make it more likely that they will move forward. That to me is the most important role I think I can play in my my current role as a U.S. Senator.
Yeah, if I might add, by the way, real quickly, Sageworks was a huge provider of technology solutions to community banks. And everybody always thinks the bank, they got a big vault of cash in the back, right? There are tons of money. As you know, to your point, community banks are small businesses. They're real small businesses. So I think you're absolutely correct. And, Dodd-Frank, maybe we needed it, maybe not, who knows, right? But the problem was largely in practice, it was painted across both large banks and small banks. So it's absolutely correct for small business. And by the way, it's empathetic of you, and I think accurate, that when a small business gets that federal form, that 3-page form, that will freak out somebody. It's not just filling it out, but what am I agreeing to that I don't know about? So that's absolutely true, that we can't, on a legislative level, we can't paint with a brush across all institutions of all sizes.
No, and the other thing that I do think that we're going to, if the people like me who like doing after action assessments, I think if we hurry up after we get through the public health crisis, after we start seeing the economy moving in the right direction, we really need to take a look at the things that the federal government has done to expedite processes and find out how many of those can become standard operating procedure. If we were able to do it in the crisis, it produced a good outcome, there doesn't seem to be a lot of bad outcomes, you can adjust for those, but how can we learn this more expedited execution on the government's part as something that should just become a part of the way we do business, and have that thinking transcend into all the business regulatory issues that we deal with every day up here.
Now, that is a terrific challenge too, and it's one that, we have seen some glimpses of sunlight here, economically speaking, in terms of the growth of PPE manufacturing, for example. And I'm reminded of wartime efforts and people who have dropped everything, and either just because they want to contribute to the cause and make sure that this type of equipment is available, or because they want to give their employees something to do and be able to keep the lights on. We've seen a lot of businesses who have pivoted, probably over 200 here in the state, and we're working with them daily, helping them in different ways. But I know, and several of them have raised this issue with me, that when the FDA goes back to business as usual, they're a little bit cautious about what that means. And I think in terms of I think the state of North Carolina is looking at a window of opportunity for us to bring this industry back here. But if it becomes too arduous a certification process, we will lose some along the way.
Well, that's exactly right, Brian. I mean, if you take a look at the textile industry that basically retooled their lines and started manufacturing things for the COVID response, some of those may represent a long-term business opportunity. Some of them may not if the regulatory burden and cost factors come into play, because I've talked with some people who are exclusively manufacturing PPEs. I'm not sure if the numbers would work if we said we'll keep on doing it, unless we take a look at some of the regulatory and other barriers that make it very, very difficult to compete in the face of international competition, which will come to this country. So we've got to work through that as a matter of public policy and say, how many of these supply chains that we activated for the COVID response do we actually need to be domestically placed, or some portion of them? And then we've got to work on tax and regulatory policy that make those numbers work. At the end of the day, these are private sector companies. They have to turn a profit or they'll go out of business. But I think there's a way to strike the balance. And that does represent a lot of opportunities for North Carolina businesses, including entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and we are, I will say, we're blessed here in North Carolina in that we have a very strong manufacturing extension partnership here in the state. And U.S. Commerce through NIST has provided some funding here. And so we're actually working with different organizations around the state, including RTI, to have some material testing done for some of these companies. And through some of the federal funds, we're able to cover the costs. I think that's going to be a great story for us. So we'll keep everyone posted. But let me ask next question for both of you. And this is one that I think a lot of times, in a situation like this, even going back, Brian, you mentioned 2008 and the recession. I think there was a lot of anticipation that minority-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, and others, women-owned businesses, might be the ones who are the first to shutter. That did not turn out to be the case. In fact, from what I understand, minority businesses added about 1.8 million jobs from 2007 to 2012. So what are some of the things that you all see, and what are the things that could make an impact for some of those specific business types?
Yeah, interesting. I just want to sort of divide that up a little bit. I'd say I'd be careful on this one, because the truth is that racism still exists. We know that, right? We all have things in our heart that maybe aren't quite right. We're human beings. There's a little bit of that out there still. There's no doubt about it. But I think your point is well taken. I've worked with a lot of MBEs throughout my whole life, actually. And I think there's been great strides made. And to go to the point that was previously made, because I do want to mention this. I came up in Milford, Connecticut. Milford, Connecticut, maybe a little like Roxborough, maybe a little like we lost a lot of we lost all our manufacturing, right? We lost it all. But unlike Milford, Connecticut, here in North Carolina, we've got good private sector, public sector partnerships. We have people moving and we have new ideas. We've got technology, we've got the universities. There's a spirit of cooperation here. And it is true. I don't want this, there's just enough negativity out. We get it all day long. there are those positive things happening in this state. It's been happening for the 30 years I've been here. Absolutely. With regard to MBEs, they've got to take advantage of the federal programs. The SBA has programs. SCORE is a good outfit. We got the small business centers here. We still have the set aside contracts. They've got to keep doing that. I think that, and I want to be deliberate in what I'm saying here. I think we've got to improve our language with people who have struggled, to let them know they can be part of this American dream without being patronizing, without talking down to people. Hey, you can be part of this. I did not know that about Senator Tillis today and about his father. I didn't know that at all. But I had very much the same experience, and I've been able to rise up. But let's make that available to everybody. So take advantage of the federal programs. There's a lot of really good stuff out there, and it's been there for 30 years, no question about it. But let's change our language around how we can empower people who for generations have not had the same opportunities that we've had as majorities.
Good
Yeah,
point.
and Brian, I'll maybe add on to that, and then I've got to run for a vote. I've got about 5 minutes left on a vote that they called in the Senate chambers. But, you know, for my part, it's continuing to put funding into our HBCUs. That's very important to me. It's something that we were able to finally get consensus on long-term funding, so that the HBCUs are a great proving ground for a number of minorities who will go on to be great leaders and business owners. I think it's going back and looking at the opportunity zones, which have had a great impact. It came out of the Tax and Jobs Act, had a great impact on minority-owned businesses. I believe that we should. It's very important to me to make sure that when we're favoring minority-owned businesses, that if all other things are equal, I think the tie gets broken by it being a minority-owned business. But we've also got to be pushing the envelope to make sure that these businesses are top performers and having programs that reward them when they do that. That's what I've been working on, what I did back when I was speaker, and it's why I support HBCUs and minority initiatives, to give them those same opportunities that propelled me out of that trailer park. And I'm going to continue to do it. But I've got my my scheduler has come in. She's given me the hook, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to move on. Brian, it was good to share this time with you. We ought to catch up sometime one-on-one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And John, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Senator Tillis. We appreciate it.
Take care.
Bye-bye. So, Brian, just to keep the conversation going, let me ask you, we've had some discussion about you know, some of the things that we've all seen just through our personal lives in different states, you in Connecticut, the senator in Florida, but you know, how does the environment for entrepreneurs in North Carolina compare to what you've seen in other states? And are there any best practices that we should be considering here?
Well, look, we're 9-1, we're 8-2. I mean, look at North Carolina compared to the northeastern states. They're a total mess, and I don't think they're going to turn around for a long time. So we're 8-2, we're 9-1, and I do want to mention this because I know there's some people listening right now. You know, it's a very strange time. I can't remember any time like this in my life, and I remember the gas shortages, but this is way weirder than that. You know what I mean? So we are 8-2, we're 9-1 as a team. We're running the ball up the middle. We are doing okay in North Carolina. So what we got to always do better, and that's what you're asking, right? But we got to remember we do pretty well. And John, look, went to Silicon Valley. I had to go to California, the last place in the world I ever want to go. But people live there voluntarily, apparently. But I'd have to go there and sell my stuff, right? You look at us versus California. Look at us versus Austin. Look at us versus Route 128 in Massachusetts. North Carolina as a technology hub, nobody's better. Nobody's better. Great style of living. I know what you're trying to get to, what we can do more. I'm going to switch the question a little bit because I think we're doing all right. One thing that bothers me, in the rural, I call them rural areas. I don't know. You know, it's like, because even though Milford was in the Northeast, it was, and it wasn't rural really. It was kind of like a Roxborough, New Bern, Lumberton, you know, lost a lot of industry. I think we've got to do more in these quote rural areas, or let's put it this way, forget about rural. The areas that are not Raleigh, Durham, or Charlotte, or Greensboro. You know, there's a big state out there. It's not just those three areas. So we got to do more in those areas. We got to do more with the kids, teaching entrepreneurship. Maybe we can help create more jobs or entrepreneurs out there, because I don't want that fundamental part of our society to go downhill too much. If you look at the numbers, John, you know, the brain drain is unbelievable, right? And I really worry that we're going to lose our sense of who we are. I've been incredibly lucky. I don't know why it happened. And show at the small business centers. Within a year of getting out of Duke, 54 small business centers hired me. They welcomed me. You know, I'm here, got some guy from Connecticut. They welcomed me. They all hired me here in the South. It was unbelievable. I became an adopted son here. And as I traveled through the state, and I really mean this, I don't want to lose what is core to this state, which is not just all us fancy people in Raleigh, Durham, but what's going on in the rural areas. Same thing with Connecticut, by the way. Connecticut used to be 2/3 dairy farming. People don't know that. So I'm a little worried about the formation of businesses in the rural areas of North Carolina.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's certain parts of the state that all you have to do is drive through, you know, the main drag. And, you know, there was a time that you knew that a small town would have a barbecue place and would have a Baptist church and would have a bank. But that's one of the things that I think worries me the most, is that, you know, a lot of the banks have left these areas. And so what we know about banking in general is that, you know, when a bank leaves a community, we know that mortgages will stay the same and some of the personal savings will stay the same, but the small business lending drops.
Absolutely. And there's and you know this already, but there's good guys like Chris Gergen, you know, at First Cities. There are smart people here, but all they got to do is drive 18 minutes out of Raleigh, Durham to see these areas that are vital to this state. We do not want our state to be so focused on the Raleigh, Durham, Greensboro, and Charlotte, and Wilmington. The state is a great state with a lot of wonderful people, and we got to protect those people too, because the tech people, they're going to be fine. We don't need to worry about them. They're getting external money, but I do worry about those areas. New Bern, you know, places like, you know, all these areas. But I think that we got some good entrepreneurs, and you too, your office, and the rural center. And I think by working together, private sector, public sector, you know, like smart people coming together, say, let's preserve the essential elements of this state.
Yeah, and you know, I don't think you can underestimate the overall importance of the rural community. I mean, even in a situation like what we're dealing with now, we were talking about PPE manufacturing a moment ago.
Right.
The companies that I'm working with are not from Raleigh and Charlotte. The companies that I'm working with are from Richmond County. They're from Old Fort. They're from Mount Airy. They're from rural North Carolina, and they are the ones who have dropped what they're doing to contribute to this. And it's wonderful to see. The only thing I would say, just in terms of things that we can do to improve, is love to see more emphasis on broadband infrastructure.
Yeah,
you know, that's one of those things that
you're right. Yeah.
We don't connect that community, you know, in a lot of different ways. I think about that small coffee shop I visited over Christmas in Hot Springs. My wife and I took the kids out there, and you know, everything, she had the Foursquare adapter on her phone, and we were able to ring us up no problem. But it's got to be better.
Yeah. By the way, thank you, hallelujah, because I was talking to some legislators about that, and you know, because I'm private sector, but it's like there are things that we need to do in the public sector. It never occurred to me we can't get a cell connection. Although I will tell you, out at my farm in Wake County, I can't, but I don't know how that happened. But I will say this to you on a serious note, like there are places in this state you can't do it. I mean, my goodness. So, and we're not the only state. I mean, we're not the only state like that. So I think that's somewhere where we need the public realm. Absolutely.
So I've spent a lot of time with manufacturers over the last 5 to 6 years. And one of the messages that we have to reach a variety of different audiences when we talk about promoting manufacturing as a career, as a profession, as a job for someone coming out of a high school or a community college. And to be honest, we know we have to communicate to a lot of different audiences. We have to communicate to the student, to the parents, and to the grandparents who may be telling their grandchildren, I don't want you to work in a mill. But today's mills in Johnston County, you could be looking at a business like Grifols, where you're doing this advanced manufacturing that's going to require some amazing skills. But what advice would you have if we had folks from our Department of Public Instruction and the high schools on the line? What can we do to get the high schools to focus more on entrepreneurship?
Oh man, you're overwhelming me today. You're overwhelming me. I mean, I don't even know where to start. So first of all, what is wrong with someone not going to college? You know, you and I, just looking at you, kind of same generation, got to go to college, got to go to college, got to go to college. Like, why? You know, maybe you don't go to college. Look at Senator Tillis. How did he become a partner in an accounting firm? He's a phenom, right? And he didn't even go to college. We got college later, right? But my point is, on a serious note, why is it? What is wrong with going out and making $15, $20 an hour and having a nice home? And why do we always got to push people toward being fancy? We got to be fancy. We need a college degree. We need now, maybe for my kids, you know, a little different or whatever, but like, and they wanted to do it, but why is it that everybody has to do that? And I think we got turned around on that. So to get to your point, manufacturing is not what it used to be. It's mechanized, usually. It's clean. There's procedures. It's routinized. The job quality is much better than when my grandfather came here as an immigrant. And I think we got to change the kids' attitudes and get off of this whole thing that if you don't score a certain thing on an SAT, you don't exist as a human being. I reject that summarily. Now, everybody should have the opportunity to go to college. But I think it's a psychology thing, and I think it came right out of the 60s. John, when you and I were coming up, like everybody's got to go to college. So specifically, I mean, I don't know, but, you know, let people talk about that more. Let that become part of the discourse. And but I don't know where it came from or how it came from it. And but what's wrong with you? You're a carpenter. If you want to go to college and be a carpenter who went to college, great. If you want to be a great carpenter or a great plumber and not go to college, you know, you might make $60,000, $70,000 a year. True. And by the way, you don't have all the stress on you. And as a footnote, you don't have $100,000 of college debt on you.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Well, before we close today, one thing I did want to hear your thoughts on is that as much as we hope, you know, all of those students coming out of the high schools follow the straight and narrow, we know that not everybody will. Right. And I know you've had some success with your Inmates to Entrepreneurs program. What are some of your thoughts about that and the importance of that program overall? Yeah, well, just real quickly, I've told this story so many times, I get bored with myself. So I met Reverend Harris, changed my life, good friend of mine. My son William's here in the office with me. He knows Rev, a Black Baptist minister out of Oxford, North Carolina. He do ministry at the prisons. Met him almost 30 years ago, 1992. And I went to a prison and with him as he did his Bible stuff and met people. And I would ask him small talk, what are you going to do when you get out? And I remember one guy in particular said, I'm going to go get a job. And I was thinking, geez, that might be hard to do. So that was the eureka moment for Inmates to Entrepreneurs. Instead of getting a job, go create one, go start your own company. I really believe in it. I always said, Charlie's over here. You know Charlie Bradley. He's a new CEO, by the way. Congratulations, Charlie. You deserve it. And I always say, like, at that time, like, it just happened organically. It was a eureka moment. And it was really about creating entrepreneurship and doing for people, giving them the second chance. So I always say to these guys, we started it before it was cool. It was 1992. But the idea specifically is when people get out of prison, to give them a true second chance. And what better way to give them a second chance than help them start a business? By the way, John, low capital business. We low capital, less than $1,000, because we know not everybody has capital. And so what do you mean by low capital businesses in general? I know that you came up through the technology startup. So what do you mean by that? Car detailing, cleaning out gutters. We got a great business is pooper scooping, believe it or not. It's a very profitable business. Car detailing, cleaning houses, tree maintenance or repair. All businesses that you can do usually with your body, you know, service businesses that you can start for less than $1,000, and you can make good money doing that. And that's what we focus on, you know, and it doesn't matter whether you went to college or not, by the way. And we're very practical, John, extremely practical. Like,
all of our teachers are practitioners. They've done it. So how do you start a business low capital? We walk right through it. But it's been a labor of love. And, you know, I always say we're not shooting foul shots. You know, we're playing baseball. You know, we're 1 for 3. Not everybody who comes through the program starts a business. But we've hopefully impacted people's lives a little bit. But I always also say too, it's not us, it's the people who start the business. So, but it's been a nice part of my life and a wonderful thing to do here in North Carolina.
Well, it's one of those things that is so easy to overlook, you know, one little small business starting up and thinking about what type of impact they could have on, you know, a state with the massive GDP that we have. But the truth is that small business is just a huge driver here. I think small businesses employ something like 1.6 million people in this state.
Right.
And so this is of critical importance. I know that through this all, we've gotten a lot of calls through our Blink team, and that number is 1-800-228-8443 for the folks who need some help today. But we're getting a lot of emergency relief calls, but fascinatingly, we've gotten even more calls from people who want to start a business in this present environment.
Right.
They recognize this as an opportunity. And so to your point, you know, people have recognized, maybe I got laid off, you know, maybe the restaurant I worked for is closed, but you know what? I've got 2 arms and 2 legs and I can start a car detailing business.
Hey, John, I got Charlie over here. He's our like super duper like public spokesperson promotion. He always reminds me to talk about our programs. I always talk about everything except for what we do. We've got a free online program called Starter U. And by the way, now Starter High for the kids, it's totally free. So if to your point, if there's people out there who are thinking about starting a business, we've got that program available. There's no charge. There's no hidden fees. We're not going to upsell you. We've never gotten $1. And they can take that now while they're at home. It's about 8 hours and it's very practical. So it's a good time to get educated, you know.
It really is. Well, it looks like we are at about time. I'm happy to take any final thoughts from you.
Well, I do have a final thought, actually. It occurred to me just listening to the dialogue here today. And I know it seems a little, gotta be careful, a little bit like a bumper sticker, but Americans truly have an incredible history of resilience. This is not some cheap application of patriotism. It's true. We are good at free enterprise. We are very resilient. You look at the Great Depression, you look at the recession after World War I, you look at the recession in 2008, you look at a lot of things we've gone through. We will get through this. And I wanted to mention that stuff in the beginning because I did want to, you know, got to talk about reality here. There's businesses that don't have money and they got to get the money. But I think it's very important for us as leaders, John, to look at the big picture. We're very resilient. We're very good at free enterprise, and we absolutely will prevail through this.
Yep, I agree. Well, listen, thank you very much. This has been a fantastic conversation. I appreciate all your thoughts on this, and to the small business owners or potential small business owners on the line, we ask you to keep swinging away. Give us a call. You've got a lot of resources, a lot of folks out there who can advise you on things and help you get things up and running, because your businesses are going to make the difference.
Hey, John, thanks for your help, by the way, in the state. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks, everybody. And that's the end of our presentation today. Thank you all very much for joining us.